Hey guys, Tony with 319 Photography, 319photography.com. And today we're going to talk about panoramas. So stay tuned. So when I say the word panorama, a lot of people think that it's, one long, skinny image. Well, it doesn't have to be. And today I'm going to walk you through a really easy way to merge your images into a panorama. And I'm even going to go one step further. So instead of one row of a panorama, we're going to talk about how to do multiple rows of a panorama. So let me set that up, right? When I say row of panorama images, I mean you took a series of images that are overlapping, and that could constitute one row. Right? If you move your camera down, right, so you move the composition down, and then you take another series of panorama images, right, panels as we call them, that could constitute another row of images for a panorama. And you could repeat the process as many times as you want or as many times as your composition would allow. Well, I like doing that a lot in my landscape photography. I especially like doing that with a telephoto lens. This happens to be a 70-200. I love this lens, and I use it a lot in my photography. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, why do you do that? Why couldn't you just use a wide angle lens like every other normal person? And the answer is twofold. One, the compression that I get with a telephoto lens is far better than the compression that I'll get with a wide angle lens. So with a telephoto lens, I can make things stand out a little bit better depending on what I'm going for in the scene. Second reason is when I shoot panels like that and merge a large panorama together, what I get is a final image file that has a insane amount of resolution, and that works out really well for me because I print large a lot. A lot of the galleries that I exhibit in, they want large images. And not only for that, it's just fun for me to create really big images. So I like doing it this way. So let's get into this. First things first, you have to have the images to create. I can tell you, biggest tip, if you're going to try to create a panorama image, first thing you need is a tripod. You got to be on a tripod. It's really hard to do this handheld. If you're steady enough and your shutter speed's fast enough, there's a potential you can pull it off. But the best thing in the world is just to be on a tripod. And plan your final image when you're doing this. So know what you're going for when you're shooting it. A lot of tips and tutorials and things you'll read or study will tell you if you're going to create images for a panorama, each image needs to have a 30% overlap. I like to go a little bit more than 30%. I'd say somewhere around 40 to 50%. That's the overlap that I'm going for. And when you take those panels, right, those different images that you're going to use in a row or in a single panorama image, it's important that you try to get them as straight as possible. So you need to be cognizant of how your tripod head works. If you can't rotate that camera on a straight line, you may have some issues when it comes to merging them together. So be cognizant of that. So once you've gotten your images and now you need to put them all together, one of the easiest ways to do it is in Lightroom. So let's jump into Lightroom. And here we are. You can see that I've got an image right here that is the first image in a series for a row that I intended to use for a panorama. So this happens to be in Glacier National Park. I shot this late in 2020 up in Montana. It's a beautiful national park if you've never been there. Great views, great scenery, great landscape. Absolutely love going up there. And it begs to be showcased in a photograph. So here I've got this image followed by several others, and you'll notice they all have 5 stars down there at the bottom. I like to use ratings to organize my film strip so I know what I'm working on and I can identify everything. So these 5-star rated images here are all part of my first row. So these are all panorama images. And you can see that each one has an overlap from the one previous. And if we sat here and went through each single image, you could tell that there's an overlap. So here you can see now I'm on the right-hand side of the panorama. There's a couple different reasons why I really love this composition. I shot it late in the day, and the sun was coming through the valley on the right-hand side here that's off camera, and it was creating these lovely sun rays, and there's nice shadows, and you can kind of see here that there's a river, right, and a big waterfall coming down from the melt on this snow up here in the middle of this mountain. Absolutely love the scene, and I'll show you the final image when we're all done. Guys, granted, these are all raw files, right? So they're flat, they look flat, they have to be developed, they have to be processed. But that's a whole different story, right? Let's focus on merging this panorama together. So once I have my rows identified, so that's my top row, and then here's my middle row, and you may be seeing already that I have more images in my top row than I do in my middle and what will be my third or bottom row. That's okay. Typically, I do like to have the exact same amount of images in each row, but most of the time, if you're off by one or so, at least if it's on the edges, right, on the left or the right, you'll be okay. It'll work out okay. So this is my middle row, and then here's my third or bottom row. And you can see how far down my images went. Yeah, so that is my third row. All right. So here's the thing. You have to do this in sections, because if I tried to merge all of that together all at once, Lightroom would hate me and freak out and shut down. So we're going to do the top row first. So I'm going to select the first image and go through to the last image in my top row. I'll shift, click, highlight everything. Now, 2 ways to get to the photo merge. You can either come up to the top menu up here and click photo, and then go down to photo merge and then click panorama, or you can just right click your selection in your film strip and come up to photo merge and panorama. All right, so when that happens, it's going to bring up a dialog box. It's going to create a preview. Lightroom's not liking me today, so it's going to go a little slow, but that's okay. It'll eventually get there. I've been taxing my desktop a little bit. All right, there we are. So you can see here, it gives you a preview of your panorama. And it may look a little weird and funky because you're going to have these white spaces around. That's okay. This slider right here, it says boundary warp. If you take that and drive it all the way up, it'll fix your margins there, your white spaces, right? It'll make everything look nice and clean. So the other thing here to worry about is what's called a projection. So typically, I will either use perspective or spherical projections, depending on the image. And you can mess around with all 3 of these and see what you like. A lot of times, Cylindrical is hard to get the projection for that. So let's stick with spherical here, and you would click merge, and I've already done that, so I'll show you what it looks like. But once you click merge, Lightroom will think, and then it'll pop the product down here into your film strip. So here is the top row of my panorama that's been merged together. So I've done that. I can set that aside. Then I would then repeat that process for my middle row. So I'll select the first image of my middle row panorama and the last image of my middle row panorama. Right click on the selection of the film strip or go up top to photo and photo merge. Click panorama. You'll see it'll do the exact same thing. It'll create a panorama preview. You will be able to select your projection. And when all of that's ready to rock and roll, don't forget about your boundary warp. You're going to have to slide that up to fix the white space here. So slide that boundary warp, select your projection, click merge. Lightroom does its thing. It thinks for a second. Life's good. And boom, there's your middle row of your panorama. So we can tell the difference here between the top row, and the middle row. Okay. And now my final row, I'll select the first image in that, the last image of the final row, shift click, and then go through the same process. Photo merge, panorama. It'll do the exact same thing. Create your preview, remember your boundary warp, and remember your projection. Once all that's ready to set and it gives you your preview and you're happy, you'll click merge. So boundary warp up, projection set, click merge, it'll think, and then here is the bottom row of the panorama all merged together. Now, with those 3 rows done, if I click each one of select each one of them. So now all 3 rows are selected and highlighted. If I go again, right click, photo merge, panorama, or again, go up to the top, photo merge, panorama. Now, it will bring up the same dialog box. And it will likely take Lightroom a bit of time to do this, depending on your computer, because you're putting a lot of images together, really. Even though you've already merged those rows together, it's still a lot of data. So here, with the boundary warp, we need to fix that, right? Just like we did before. And when I merge multiple rows of a panorama together, I have found, and this is just me, right? I found that using the perspective projection is the best. So now that I've selected the projection and the boundary warp is set, guys, I haven't really said this earlier, but if your auto crop, auto settings, and create stack are selected by default or by accident, uncheck those. I don't want Lightroom to do all that stuff for me. Unless you know that's what you want it to do, then I would just leave those things unchecked. Okay? So all that set, you would click merge, and Lightroom would do its thing, and it would think, and the final product of all of that together now is this. And the cool thing about all of this is if I zoom in here, give it a second for Lightroom to load up, my resolution here, and I haven't even processed this yet, which I'll show you the final process. The resolution on the image, just what you can see in Lightroom, is amazing. The file size is going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. And I'll be able to print that really large without losing detail. So just so you guys can see, after I've gone through the editing process and processed it, here is the final image, and I will show that full screen, and it'll load up a second because it's a lot of resolution that it's going to take to display that. So give it a second, and it'll click over to being nice and sharp and colorful and all that good stuff. And there is the final image after it went through the post process. And here now you can see why I absolutely love this composition. I love the light coming in on the right, just bathing those levels, that depth there of the mountains. That was absolutely gorgeous. And this waterfall here in the middle is absolutely beautiful. And in a very large print that is going to stand out. I'll zoom in here, and it's going to have to try to render this because again, this is a lot of resolution here. There we go. That is gorgeous. And guys, I am a long way away from that waterfall and that mountain, but that's the beauty of using a really long lens, not really long, but a long lens, a telephoto lens in your landscape photography. If you can do this, you'll be able to create images that have a ton of detail, a ton of depth. And if you're into printing your images, if you have a need or desire, this is one way to up that resolution and create an image that has just stunning detail. Guys, I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please subscribe to our channel, like the video, and tell us in the comments, have you ever tried this type of landscape photography with a telephoto lens and creating panoramic images like this? In the meantime, check out our website at 319photography.com, where you can find more information on the workshops that we teach. They're always a blast, and we love teaching this stuff out in the field. Until next time, take care.